Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Hello, everybody. My name is Gerald Tang. I'm the Executive Director of Career Services and Internship here at Bridgewater State University. Welcome, everybody, for today's sessions that we focus on discussing law school. So I'm excited to have two fabulous colleagues here from UMass Law, Natalia, and also Aiden from Boston University Law School here to share a little bit about insight pertaining to the law school experiences, journey, applications, and all the good tips that you guys can learn about and take advantage of if you are pursuing opportunity in the law school. For any students and guests in the room, if you have any questions for today, feel free to type in the chat. I do want to mention that my colleague Kathy is on the call and she will be able to help me collect some of the questions, and we will have some time to answer some of the questions throughout the session as well. So don't be afraid to type in your questions into the chat. We're trying to fill in as much as we're able to throughout the conversations. With that, I would love to start the discussions, if that's okay, with our colleagues' introductions. So Aidan, perhaps I would love for you to get started. Perhaps share a bit about yourself and perhaps your school. I would love to say briefly highlight some of the programs available at BU that will be helpful.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. I'm Aiden McSweeney. I'm the admissions specialist here at BU Law in the admissions office. I've been at BU Law for 2 years. Um, BU Law is a school located in the city of Boston. We are in the city limits. It's on the BU main campus, but it's in one single tower, the Law Tower. A couple of our programs, I mean, we have a lot of great programs here at BU, but our health law program is ranked second in the country. Our intellectual property law program is very strong. That's also highly ranked. And our tax law program is as well. And I'm looking forward to speaking with you guys about law school.
Excellent, thank you. Next up, we have our lovely colleagues from UMass Law. Talia, I would love for you to share a little bit about UMass Law for the student who may not be familiar with what's going on and programs available at UMass Law.
Absolutely. So, hi everyone. My name is Natalia Vargas. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions at UMass Law. UMass is located in Dartmouth, Massachusetts, and we have our own building, which is a few minutes from the UMass Dartmouth main campus. Our own building consists of half academic space and half library space, so our students can basically find everything that they need within the building. We also have law school housing located on the main campus. I think that's kind of important to know for people, with law school being an entire ordeal. Us providing campus is something that kind of makes it a little bit easier, but we do have law school specific housing. As far as programs go, we are the only public law school in the Commonwealth, so we are like uniquely positioned to be able to offer students a competitive tuition rate. And we also have a public service and experiential learning focus. So whether you are interested in pursuing private law or public law, we approach both of those sectors with a public interest lens. And then we also encourage our students to seek experiential learning. And by that, I mean hands-on approach, getting students out of the classroom and having the opportunity to really learn while in the field. And I'm really happy to be here with you guys. I also graduated from UMass Law. I work for UMass Law, but I did attend the law school. So if you have questions about the admissions process, I'm happy to answer those. But if you have questions about being a law student or those kinds of things, I'm also happy to answer those. Thank you for
Ex
having me.
Absolutely, Natalia, thank you. While I have you, love to kind of perhaps you can kick us off the next questions here. Love to learn a bit of general sense of the admission timeline. Like what can students expect? I know that we have a like a partnership program with UMass Law. If you don't mind share both, like if the students are part of that program, if it's not, what will be the general timeline for a student applying to UMass Law?
Absolutely. So if you're not familiar with the 3+3 program, that is where you can complete your bachelor's degree and your law school degree in a combination tract where you save 1 year's worth of time and also undergrad tuition. For admissions purposes, a 3+3 student is encouraged to seek out the resources within their pre-law program or the 3+3 department as soon as they know that this is something they want to do, because essentially you lose 1 year. Well, you gain 1 year's time, but everything moves up 1 year for you. So you're going to very quickly be in college, but also pursuing an entrance exam, a personal statement, letters of recommendation. So if you know you want to do that sooner rather than later, typically at that, a student who is a 3+3 student looking to start law school at our university would begin their admissions process at the beginning of their junior year, because then they would ideally have a whole year, all of junior year, to seek admission to the law school. The partnership allows our university to consider your file within the binds of a 3+3 agreement. So we're going to look specifically for the classes that you took at Bridgewater State and how they may have prepared you. They also allow you to have a little bit more guidance when it comes to the admissions process, because you have presumably a 3+3 advisor or a pre-law advisor at your university. So I would say a year to in advance, you would start the process. For a regular admission student, and by regular admission, I mean, if you are looking to go right after undergrad, right, then you would be applying starting this time. But at whatever point you choose to attend law school, maybe you decide to take a gap year or do something else for a year, you want to start about a year before you want to go. So fall of 2026, you would start about this year. Our university's application opens September 15th. A lot of universities go from September 1st or September to the end of September. So I'll let Aiden speak to his university's admissions, but our university has a rolling admissions process. And I think that is important to keep in mind, because that means that we're admitting students all year around. And so if you apply early, you are going to get let's just say that it's easier to apply in the fall because there are all the spots to give away, right? If you wait till the tail end of the cycle where there are only a handful of spots, you're going to be competing with a lot more people, and therefore the competition is going to presumably be stiffer, right? When you apply early, you give yourself the most opportunity to for admissions to work with you, right? So you want to start the application before the end of the year is my recommendation. Make sure that you are taking a test, registered for a test before the end of the year, at least once. That way you can give yourself time to retest. Okay, I hope that answers your question.
That's great. We will unpack a little bit more about the test requirements and all the other things throughout that. But that's a great overview. Aiden, anything you want to share from BU Law perspective, admission, the overall time frame, or if you want to unpack a little bit about what students can start to prepare at a year in advance, what that looks like, that will be helpful as well.
Yeah, I think Natalia did a really good job of covering a lot of that information, especially the rolling admissions process, which is the same for our school. So we are admitting people throughout the cycle, and everything she said about spots being available is true. We start September 1st. That's when our application opens, and it closes April 1st. I would recommend that students apply prior to Thanksgiving. That being said, if you apply after that, you're still definitely in the competitive timeline. In regard to testing, the latest LSAT that we would recommend applicants take is the January LSAT. Anything after that is getting a little late. Also, if you want to apply before you're taking like your final LSAT, let's say you're planning to take the November LSAT, you can still apply prior to that test release, and we can hold your application for that score release if you already have a test score on file. Otherwise, LSAC will withhold the CAS report from flowing to the schools. The CAS report is a credential assembly service report, which contains your letters of recommendation, your transcripts, which is an essential part of your application being complete. So that's a little something about LSAT timeline. That's all I'll say for right now as we go on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for both of you. Just going to give students perspective, right? Ideally, you want to, there's a couple components associated with the law school application process. You need to have the LSAT, right? Which is the law school entrance exam that many school requires. And then you have the different components. We're going to touch upon a little bit more the essay part of it, which is a statement or some sort of essay components that law school typically requires, just well blanket in general. And then you also have the letter of recommendations that you usually will get from individual. That's different than the employment-based references. These are actual letters that you'll be asking for professionals to write about you pertaining to your aptitude and your interest to the law school and law careers. And obviously, you typically might be submitted some sort of resume or some sort of background information to highlight about any of your past experiences related to your interest in law. And certainly there may be other supplementary material like the transcript you'll be expected to submit and any other supporting documents that you need to collect, right? But usually when we advising students from the law school pieces, the first thing people need to think about is when are you thinking about and considering your entrance to law schools? Then you plan for a year in advance to apply, but usually your preparation will be even 6 months earlier than that at minimum. The 6 months early is getting ready for the entrance exam, getting it prepped because it's similar to SAT per se, but it's a lot more complicated, a lot more intense, right? So you want to kind of have at least 6 months in advance in that process. Aiden, Natalia, is that sounds correct in terms of that general guidance?
Absolutely. I think that students should keep in mind that the more time that you give yourself, the better position you're gonna put yourself in. So obviously, if you decide to go to law school last minute, you don't have that as a benefit. But if you do know in advance, the sooner you start to study, the sooner you start to get your materials together, the better it is for you. As far as admission cycle and financial aid at our university, it's the same for merit-based scholarship. So if you're thinking about going to law school, you want to keep in mind that preparing in advance is going to be key to your success.
Just to add on to that, and I reiterate that completely. You want to apply to law school when when you feel your application is the strongest. 81% of our previous class had 1 or more years of professional post-grad experience. So even if you take time after graduating from undergraduate, that's totally fine. You don't want to feel rushed. You want to have time to make sure that your application is as strong as you can have it.
That's great. Let's break down a little bit more specifically from some of the elements that we just touched upon, perhaps. Let's start with, let's say I'm a student, I'm interested in pursuing law school right out of undergraduate. So I'm straight into law school, right? Let's say my first inclination will be learning about the information. Let's say we just got that. The first thing I might think about is the preparations for for LSAT. Let's break it down a little bit more from at the moment. How would you advise students kind of preparing for the LSAT piece? Do you recommend them try multiple times? Does it look differently if they try multiple try? What would you suggest people preparing for the LSAT perspective? Aiden, perhaps you can start us off.
Uh, BU reviews your highest LSAT score, which is really important. If you decide to take it multiple times, your top score is the one that we consider. That being said, if you take it 12 times and there's a lot of cancellations on that, that can look slightly suspect. For questions specifically about the LSAT, I would recommend that students go to lsac.org. LSAC puts on the exam, and I think that they have the best information about prep, timeline, and information about the exam specifically. So I just want to shout that out as a resource when you're thinking about prepping for law school.
Excellent. Natalia, anything you want to add from your end?
Yeah, I think that it's really important what Aiden said about what the school considers because not every school does that, right? Not every school considers the highest LSAT. UMass Law does as well. So if you have questions about that, feel feel free to contact the school and ask them, because it can make a difference in, the strength of your application. UMass Law will consider your highest test score. My advice for you as a person who took the LSAT 3 times and does not wish that on anyone, is that you prepare as much as you can before the first time so that you can maximize your score in that first attempt. However, there are factors outside of your control that have nothing to do with the test and more with the testing environment and how we feel that can affect your score. And so be open to the fact that you might have to retest, and think about how much your desire to law school compares to your desire not to take the LSAT again, right? So if you really want to go to law school, you kind of have to push through it. And I really, really recommend that if you confront it on the first try, then absolutely amazing for you, just to minimize costs and your time. And to reemphasize what Aiden said, the LSAC is going to be your best point to start at, because they are, or I'm sorry, excuse me, the LSAC, because they do write the LSAT exam. So they have a Law Hub web tab on their website where you can navigate to and use their resources. They have a free access to sample exams, and they also have like a paid, I believe, a paid option as well. My recommendation is to start with the free and see where you land after that. If you feel like you're doing really well without paying for anything, then you might not need to invest money into a prep course. If you feel like you need extra support, then that might be the time to consider a prep course, whether it is with LSAT or Kaplan or those other commercial companies. I just would caution students to going right away into a test prep course, because it is expensive and it's just not what every student needs. You know yourself best, so think about where you are in your academic journey and use those diagnostics tests as a way to gauge whether or not you feel like you need extra support in the testing department or not.
Got you. Thank you for sharing that. And I think this, the next part of it, that pretty common questions that many students ask. Does the GPA make a difference and factor into the application process? Do you guys only look at something like major specific GPA versus overall accumulated GPA? What about the school? Let's say I'm a transfer student into that. Does it make a difference between looking at the previous school versus our current, like at BSU, what my GPA looks like? Natalia, you want to comment to start?
Yeah, so LSAC will recalculate your GPA for you on the CAS report. It's one of the methods that they have put in place to kind of level the playing field depending on degree sought and also institution attended. I do think it's important to keep in mind that your GPA is important, right? Because it is one of the factors that all applicants have to have. What I would say at our university is to think about the individual classes as being equally as important. If you are in a degree in which you took a handful of composition, writing, reading intensive courses, and you excelled in that, and then it's in the context of science and math and all these other courses that may have brought your GPA down, that us looking at the GPA is not where we stop. We dig into the transcripts, we look at the grades. And so there are ways to where your GPA might not weigh as much, because the importance really is in us figuring out the likelihood of a student being successful in law school and ultimately on the bar exam, right? And so the GPA kind of limits that. I would encourage you to think about the GPA in the greater context of your application. However, I will caveat that with, when you are thinking about what your chances are as an applicant at a particular institution, start with the percentiles of the previous cohort, right? That will kind of tell you where you land in a very broad way, where you land in relation to the other applicants and those who are admitted. However, if you don't fit into those percentages, do not take yourself out of the race by any means. I think that's the biggest way to do yourself a disfavor.
That's great. Aiden, similar questions, but I'm gonna throw in additional pieces. Does the major make a difference? If I'm not really majoring in something that looks like a interest in, law, basically, like, let's say I'm a theater major, I'm a dance major, but I really want to go into law school. Does the major that students select for undergraduate factor in, and if so, at what level, alongside with the GPA question?
Yeah, first of all, I would say the GPA is a major component of our consideration into your law school application, along with, I mean, every part of the application is significant. Your personal statement, your resume, your letters of recommendation, your LSAT score, those are all important. The question about majors, we in our previous class had students who majored in ballet to mathematics. Law schools want, I think, um, a diverse class in the fullest sense of that word. We want people from different backgrounds and have excelled in those specific backgrounds. So obviously, if you are a dance major, we want to see success in that coursework. And so law schools aren't, at least BU specifically, isn't looking for an entire class made up of poli-sci majors, although we do get many poli-sci applicants and we admit many poli-sci majors. So again, we're just looking for applicants that are excelling in their coursework. And like Natalia said, we do look at the transcripts. We don't just take a look at the GPA and keep moving. If you were very successful in your major and the required mathematics classes you didn't do so well in, we do consider that in the application and contextualizing that transcript within your entire application. So don't, again, get disheartened. Um, for our school last year, our GPA range was a 3.02 to a 4.19. So again, that's a pretty broad selection of GPAs. So if you're on the lower end of that or even below that, definitely I would not discourage you from applying.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. You touched upon a little bit of that, like overall complete applications, right? And I'd love for you perhaps elaborate on what about the essay, letter of recommendations? What are the common things you see people make mistakes on that you would say, hey, hot tips, try not to do that? What would be some of those suggestion advice?
I would say, first of all, make sure you're reading the specific school that you're applying to requirements for every school. For BU Law specifically, we accept up to 3 letters of recommendation, but we require 2. You need to submit a personal statement and a resume. For your application to be complete, you need an LSAT score. Um, and one of the things that I see that just specifically for incomplete applications, you want to submit your most up-to-date transcript to LSAC, especially, let's say you graduated in the spring and you're applying in the fall. You definitely want to make sure that you are getting the most recent transcripts and sending it to them. If your application is initially incomplete, it's not the end of the world. Definitely contact the school that you applied to. If you can see on their status checker or they email you that your application is incomplete, give them a call, ask what happened, probably as soon as possible. It's more so just an administrative um, problem that it's going to hold up the review. So you just want to make sure that happens right away. In regard to like what makes specific components successful, is that what you're asking right now, or
Yeah,
sure?
like or common mistake that people make from essays and so forth, that you might come across or letter of recommendations. Do you have any opinions on like how students can position themselves or things that they are not realizing they're making mistake on, but it does make a difference
Yeah,
in the application?
I would say again, this is just super basic. Read the prompt the essay that you're responding to. Schools will have slightly different personal statement requirements. For example, B uses why law school. Make sure you're addressing the prompt directly. Obviously, proofread your writing for grammatical and spelling errors. And also, a common mistake is a lot of students are applying to a lot of law schools, and it's a heavy lift. It's a lot of moving parts. So if you're applying to Boston University School of Law, definitely if you're writing to BU Law, write BU Law. You don't want to write Boston College to BU Law. It happens. It's an easy mistake, but you just want to make sure that you're honing in on the specifics of what you're writing.
Got you. Thank you so much. Natalia, I want to throw another twist on that similar questions. AI nowadays can write many things, everything technically, right? Do you come across that into application process? What do you advise for student writing essays and recommendations or anything like that? But using AI, do you guys flag that at the back end?
I would say that we have all of our students certify at the end of their application that they're submitting work that is theirs. So that is something to keep in mind, because if we do for some reason come across something that is not authentically theirs, then it could cause problems for you, as far as like the admissions process and application process. My suggestion when it comes to AI use in the application is that our professors know how to recognize that language and can easily spot when something has been written by AI. A lot of students use it for like grammatical or, refining. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like feeding in your resume and asking it to regurgitate a personal statement. There's a lot of ways for that to go wrong, and we've seen it plenty of times. I've seen it. And my caution to you is that the personal statement, because we don't do interviews at my institution, is kind of the only way where we can really hear you speak to us. It doesn't help when it's not you, right? It doesn't help you when it's not you. And our faculty, our admissions committee at UMass Law is faculty, right? They read a lot of student work. They just have the ability to tell when a student is writing genuinely, when they're not, when it's them, when it sounds a little bit like it's been fabricated. So I just caution you, because it can also be issues for you down the line, if it ever does come up again. The legal profession is very concerned about ethical responsibility and professional responsibility. You don't want this to be the thing that hangs you up, right? You just don't. So I would say be careful, and use discretion when you are submitting things that you may have used AI for.
That's great. Just for student in the room to recap, right? We talked a little bit about the LSAT, just so we are clear with the acronyms, right? The law entrance exam piece, preparation. So we talked a little bit about GPA and also your major. There are some consideration, but your major does not limit you with possibility for law school. We just talked about so far. Spend some time with your essay, making sure that you're answering the questions of the prompt that the law school asking you to fill in. Tailor your application to each of the law school from that pieces. That are all recommendations. One thing I will want to add here from a professional perspective, you want to give people time to write something for you that is genuinely helpful for your application. So do not wait until the week before the deadline and ask a faculty, ask a professional, ask any other advisor to write your letter. That doesn't give them enough information to talk about your aptitude and your interest in law school. So you want to give people ample of time to write something for you to be submitted for as part of your lawsuit application process. I just want to mention that it's something that we do notice, and we hear that all the time from faculty colleagues saying that, gosh, I wish I could write something good for you, but I don't have enough time to put something together for you. If that's not ample of time that we are able to get from the students applying for that. Let's switch gear a little bit for that. There are a couple questions coming through, but I love to kind of touch upon a little bit of tail end of that, selection. I have all these things now. I'm ready to apply. How would you suggest people to select law school? Does the ranking matter? Is a specialty matter? Or even the where they practice law and the entrance exam matters? I love to get a sense from that. Maybe perhaps Natalia, you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. So I would like to preface this with, I'm going to speak on behalf of UMass Law, and it's really important that you do keep these in mind and broad. But if you have specific questions about an institution, that you do reach out to them, because every school might see this differently. In my opinion, both as a lawyer and as an admissions representative, the ranking of a school is going to whether the ranking of the school is important is going to depend on the field of law that you are looking to pursue. Some students are looking to enter a highly selective, lucrative area of the law, known as big law. That is one of those fields where the ranking is historically been important for the employers to have, and for the student to have that in order for them to be employed by them. I would say most other fields of the law are not like that. Most other fields of the law, if anything, we're just hurting, the community is hurting for lawyers. There is a lot of demand for lawyers in various fields. And so there isn't the need to go to a top ranked school. Um, I a lot of people also recognize that rankings are highly politicized. They're highly bureaucratic systems that don't necessarily represent, the value of a school. There's a lot of other outside factors that go into a school's ranking that simply are not things that would be relevant to the student, I would say. Um, that is what I would say when it comes to ranking. When it comes to a JD, right? Most universities, most law schools, everybody graduates with the same JD. That means that you are going to receive an education that's going to prepare you to be a lawyer in various fields. You might choose to seek an area of concentration or an area of focus. Different schools call it different things. And that might be highlighted on your degree, but it doesn't make you a specialist. It doesn't make you a person who can advertise themselves as a specialist in a certain type of law, because jurisdictions have requirements for that. You have to practice a certain amount of time and have a certain amount of client hours. So I would say that it's important to get a well-rounded legal education, because when you learn the law, you realize really what you might like. Different types of law work differently for people's brains. And I'll give you a personal example. When I went to law school, I went in thinking I was going to practice immigration law because I am from an immigrant family and I'm bilingual. I did the immigration clinic, and within like the first 2 weeks, I realized I was very bad at immigration law. And by bad, I mean my brain wasn't quite processing that everything was very black or white. And I did not like the administrative part of law. I like to talk to clients and counsel and give advice and make decisions together. There wasn't a lot of that in the immigration department. And, I made a really big pivot at that point. Had I picked a school that really focused on immigration, I may have pigeonholed myself and not given myself an opportunity to seek other interests of mine. So I just caution you to put all your eggs in one basket when it comes to an interest law, because JDs are historically meant to be very versatile degrees. You don't want to take that away from the degree, because it's what makes the degree a very valuable one. I hope that answered your question.
That's great. Thank you so much. Hey, Aiden, let's go to you. Your take about what we just mentioned briefly. If there is any thoughts about, selection of law school recommendations, I would love to throw in a spin. There were there are two questions here really quickly. Do you require interview at BU Law? If so, what interview experience is like?
Yeah. Personally, BU Law does not do interviews, and I can't honestly speak to the interview process. Each school is different. If you have those specific questions, I would again reach out to every law school that you're applying if that's just to ask that question. In regard to like choosing a law school, there's so many different components, and most of them are personal. A couple of the numbers that I would, if you're going to do research on them, I would think about the bar passage rate. You want to go to a school ideally that preps students to succeed at the bar exam. It's a hard exam, it's a strenuous exam, and you want to make sure that you have as much support as possible for that. I would also look at employment outcomes. As Natalia said, if you want to go to big law, there's schools that definitely are going to set you up for that. If you're more interested in public interest, take a look at people's or schools' employment outcomes, government, education. I would also look at schools and where they place in regard to region. Law schools can be very regional. Boston University specifically, we place over 50% of our graduates in the Boston metro area. Our second largest region is New York. Our third is DC, and our fourth is California. DC and California flip often. So if your dream is to go to and practice law in California, Maybe a California school might be the best decision for you. If you want to go to New York, maybe a New York school. That doesn't mean that if you want to practice law across the country that you have to go to school there. Like I said, BU, we place people across the country. We place people in South Carolina. So again, that's something to consider. And Natalia touched on this a little bit about program specific questions. If you absolutely want to practice health law, then BU might be a great place for you. You also, if you have no idea, maybe a school with a ton of flexibility. If you come to BU and you really want to practice health law, then you can come here and practice health law and study health law and get experiential opportunities in health law. But if you come here thinking you're going to do that and you don't do that, we still have over 200 plus courses to choose from for your 2L and 3L year. So you're going to get an opportunity to pivot and craft the education that you want. That's one of the nice things about law school, at least BU specifically, is after 1L and the core courses you're going to take at every law school, which is torts, property, criminal law, civ pro, contracts. Like those courses are going to be standard across 1L at every law school. But after that, it's not like undergrad at most places where you have like a super strict schedule. You can really have some flexibility.
Excellent. Aiden, let's stay with you for 1 second, right? For somebody who might not know where they're going or they're applying for, they're considering law school, but they're not sure what the interest area per se, right? As part of their experiences undergrad, what may be activity you recommend them to get exposure to before they apply for law school? Do you think the student club, like a pre-law society that is present here, or you're having some sort of internship experiences help, or it doesn't matter from a law school perspective?
I think any insight you can gain is good. Clarity is good. If you get an internship at a law firm, you can get a really hands-on view of how firms actually work, what the work looks like beyond maybe some of the things that you've seen on TV. Especially as an undergraduate, it's hard to know without doing it. That being said, you don't have to get an internship at a law firm. I think a pre-law society sounds great. You get to connect with like-minded individuals, create community. That all seems very smart to me. I think internships are great. I think getting experience at law firms is great. It's not required, but it kind of depends on how much you want to delve into the specifics and your personal experience.
That's great. Thank you, Aiden. Natalia, what about you? What about gap years? Like, do you recommend people to have a maybe, I'm not sure I'm ready for law school yet, but I'm gonna try and do a gap year, or even like I'm gonna do a master's degree, and there's some master's degree program like master's in law. What's your take on from that perspective? Are those helpful? Are they not? Any insight?
I I think that's a very valid question. Every student should be encouraged to kind of look at their specific situation and think about what is most important to them, right? So, for example, if the most important thing for you is to be sure about wanting to be a lawyer and doing things to help you get to that, as sure as you possibly can be, before actually being a lawyer, I would suggest that, yeah, maybe a gap year is a good idea because law school is an expensive investment and it's also a very time consuming, difficult investment. I wouldn't suggest to anyone do it if they're not as sure as they possibly could be. I myself took 2 years to financially prepare. And to prepare my application. That time allowed me to put myself in a better position financially, but also get my materials the way that I wanted them to be. So I think that for in my case, the gap years really worked in my favor. For other students, they feel like if they don't go right away, they might never go. But to that, I usually say, if you leave school and you think that you'll never come back to go to law school, then maybe you shouldn't go to law school to begin with, right? Because if you want to go to law school, you will find your way there. You will like use your resources and you can do that. But if you don't ever go back, maybe you shouldn't go there. Maybe you should do something else. So I definitely recommend that students think about their positions and decide what their priorities are and make a decision about whether a gap year is a good idea for them or not.
That's great. That's a great advice. And obviously, student in the room, if you are unsure this is the career pathway, or if you would like to learn more about that, feel free to reach out to colleagues in my office, including myself, to kind of unpack a little bit about why you decided to go to law school, or what might be ways you can adventure and learn about the careers in the law
I
sector and
also
spaces. Go ahead.
I'm so sorry. Let me add about the master's degree because I just remembered you asked about that. I have seen students who have pursued master's degrees before going to law school because that was what they wanted to do. They wanted to have a master's in a specific area and they worked in that field. And I think it has helped them prepare for law school because they're exposed to graduate level work ahead of time. And like Aiden said earlier, they have a strong population of students that took time. We also have a strong population of students that took time in between law school and undergrad. And that helps you prepare for your professional life after law school, but also during law school. So master's degrees, I think, are a good idea. Some students use master's degrees to enhance their applications because they're worried about other parts of their applications falling a little bit short. I would say I would never suggest you invest a ton of money into a degree simply for the benefits of how it's going to look in your application because that is a very risky gamble to make and it doesn't always pay off. The law school admission cycle has a way of making outside factors make a lot of influence on who gets in and who doesn't get in, right? Depends on how many applicants the school is getting. What is the political environment like? Is there a financial support for these? So what you can do is not always necessarily like the best thing or the most thing. I would caution you to do that. If you really want to get a master's degree, I'm never going to discourage you from doing that. However, for the purposes of getting into law school, I would say let's slow down and unpack maybe what might be a better option.
Absolutely. Just to clarify there, Natalia, if it's okay with you, uh, doesn't have to be a very specific master's degree. So in the students who end up choosing one to pursue a further education before they get ready for law school, they have the option to pursue a master's degree. It doesn't have to be a master's in legal studies, a master's in, whichever major it might be. Just want to clarify for folks in the room if that's a personal preference and decision that they would like to advance schooling in certain disciplines, that they would like to kind of gain exposure before they're considering law school. It is an option that they can pursue as a personal preference and choice that they will be. Is that correct to assume?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think you shouldn't feel the need to seek legal studies or a law master's degree by any means. There are definitely reasons why people pursue those degrees and it makes sense for them. But I think Aiden mentioned this earlier. Law schools really value a diverse background of of students because they are what make up the legal profession. You know, some people who have social work backgrounds have the desire to go into family law. Some people who have public health backgrounds have the desire to go into health law. Those are the things that make you uniquely positioned to do the best job. And so a diverse variety of master's degrees is always going to be good for us and good for
Excellent.
you.
Thank you, Natalia. Ian, let's go to you. One of the other topics that we haven't touched upon yet is money. Finance is financial. It's a very big financial investment for people going to law school, right? Love, Aiden, from your perspective, how does an individual fund their law school? Like, what are things that students should be asking and considering when they're thinking about entering law school?
A couple things. I want to state this first that I am not a financial aid officer. Um, Financial aid offices, there is a lot that goes into them. If you have specific questions about financial aid, contacting the financial aid office at any given school is always smart. That being said, 100% of our admitted students are considered for merit-based aid. 95% of students receive some kind of financial aid. In regard to students receive scholarships and then students take out loans. That is a very dynamic situation right now with what's happening at the federal level. and it's not something that we're going to have clarity on, I don't think, for a while. So our director of financial aid, Cheryl Constantine, is a consummate professional and has been working in financial aid for over 30 years, and she's still navigating what's going on. There's public loans like the Grad Plus loan. Some people also take out private loans. I would say for consideration of merit-based aid, you want to again apply when your application is the strongest. If that means taking the LSAT again, that might be something that you'd want to consider. People that receive merit-based aid have strong applications. That's just true. So you want to make sure that your application is as strong as possible before applying. And
Right.
law school is expensive, so it's definitely, you need to take time, take time.
Thank you, Aiden. Appreciate that. Natalia, I want to throw the same question to you. Financial options for students to consider law school. I'm gonna throw in one more twist on there, and for you, uh, does the students who are pursuing law school also work, employment? Do they consider they go full-time versus part-time? How do they factor into that? Whether or not employment, do you recommend them to be employed working somewhere while they're pursuing law school? I love kind of get your take on that as well with the financial piece.
Absolutely. So I will go with what Aiden said as far as, merit scholarships are given to those with strong applicants. We offer merit-based scholarships, so everybody is also considered. And that's where you're probably going to get the biggest bulk of aid. I would say at my institution, you're going to get the biggest bulk of aid through merit scholarships. When it comes to working during law school, our full-time students are not, they're encouraged to not work. They are encouraged specifically during that first semester to commit to going to law school full time. Some students will do a variety of I would say like very minimal hours. And then after the first semester, but really after the first year, that's when I would say a student who is full-time has more flexibility to take on a job, right? Once you've kind of gone through the first year of law school, you're like kind of well on your way, think you can breathe a little bit more. That's when you would maybe want to add a responsibility. I would also recommend seeking a job strategically. So for example, on-campus jobs are a really good way to get some money, but not conflict too much with your schedule or stress you out. I worked at the library, I worked at the admissions desk because it allowed me to be at school and get paid. Now, you're not going to get paid the most competitive hourly rate by the university, at least not at my school, but you are going to have the flexibility to maybe have a low stakes job that my students who work in my office, whenever they're not giving tours or answering the phones, they're studying. And I think that pays off in dividends in the long run. So I would say strategically choosing employment opportunities is important. I also worked at a law firm with an alum, and because he was a lawyer, specifically a lawyer for my university, he gave me a lot of flexibility to be like, if I couldn't come in on a regular basis because it was midterm season, he wouldn't ask any questions. And so developing a good relationship with your supervisors or your boss at certain jobs is important because they respect your time just like you do. And so if you do good work and you are consistent, you can build that kind of relationship to where your boss allows you to have that flexibility, right? I think so strategically choosing your job is really important. I will say I didn't have the financial ability to not work. So as soon as my first year ended, I worked up until the time of graduation, and I still managed all of my responsibilities cautiously, but I didn't work during my first year. And that is not possible for everyone. So if you need to get a job, I would definitely recommend that you start at school first. But like I said, seek out your resources at school too. There's a lot of guidance that you can get from the academic support specialists. So seek them out. Ask them questions. Maybe you can, if you're part-time, most students work if they are part-time. if you enroll or apply in a specific program, we don't tie you to that program. Let's say something changes by the time that you're ready to start law school, you can go to part-time or full-time, even after you've enrolled. If you're a part-time student and you decide that you can take on a semester full-time, you're more than welcome to do that, as well as the other way around. We will work with you. We are flexible in that way.
Excellent. We get to the tail end of it, so it will be a quick round robin, rapid fire. Let's answer as many questions as possible scenario. So I know a couple of them up earlier, so I'm gonna try to send it over to you both, and feel free to whoever want to jump in. Quick, short answer if possible. Want to get a sense, maybe Natalia, UMass Law. How many students do you have total at a given year for spot?
Right now, our student enrollment is 388 students. We typically enroll a class about 140 to 145 people. And to give you a sense of that would probably, our acceptance rate right now is just under 60%. So not everyone that gets accepted comes, but of the students who get accepted, we accept 140 deposits from them. And everybody gets a deposit deadline based on when they were admitted. So you'll have an absolute cutoff where you have to pay the money to tell us you're going to come, which is like $300 or $200 to secure your spot.
Got you. Well, Aiden, what about BU Law?
We had a class of 239 previously in this last year. I would say that the class is more so on average are 215. So whatever that is times three, variable by the graduating class leaving. We had over 8,000 applications last year, so it is a competitive process. What was this? What was the second part of that question? I'm sorry.
I think that's
Okay.
that's a good end for now. There are questions about LSAT recommendation for preparation. Suggestions for you all start with going to LSAC, which is the Law School Admissions Council. Some resources available for that. Some students choose to go into the prep courses. If you believe you would like to do that, that's personal choice and preferences, but there are certainly great resources available there to start with. So let's jump right in. Suggestions for work study and students kind of balancing during the school. I think we touched a little bit upon that already. And financial aid recommendation for financial aid. Talk to any of the admissions folks who can direct you to the financial aid counselor in each of the law school, so you can learn about what are the merit-based or non-merit-based scholarship options, and obviously loans or any other private options available for you to connect with. Uh, Questions about interview done in law school. If you have questions about that, my best bet will be first learn about which law school that actually require admissions for interview as part of the admission process. There are law school require that. Not all of them does. And audience in the room, both BU Law and UMass Law is not currently requiring admissions at the process. So just want to mention that. But if you need some information or need some help with that, direct that question to me. I'm happy to help support some of the law school interview practice as well. Let's see any other questions here. Questions, perhaps Aiden, you can answer that. Does the letter recommendations has to be done by someone that has attended law or graduated from law school?
Absolutely not. No. We're looking for people that have evaluated you in some capacity, whether that's a professor who you had a class or multiple classes with, or some kind of manager in a professional capacity. The reason that we say that we want things to be evaluative is because those are the ways that we can see how you succeeded, and they can delve into the specifics of your success. I would discourage applicants, at least for our school, from getting personal recommendations. We're looking for professionals, and although like you might have a great relationship with a pastor or a family friend, it's just not the kind of thing that we're looking for.
Excellent, thank you. And let's go to Natalia for quick questions for you. I think we mentioned briefly about that, but does law school value any specific work experiences prior to applying?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that there are specific professional experiences that we value over the other. It really is in the totality of the applicant's file. I think it's good to have work experience and it's good to see that you're a well-rounded person. Not everything needs to tie back to being legal. If you play sports, if you're involved on campus, fraternity and sorority life, other things like that will enhance your application in their own way and they speak to the kind of person you are, which is more of what we're looking for, what kind of student you are, but what kind of person you are.
Excellent. We'll squeeze one last question. I know we are at time here. Either one of you can answer that. If the students have a higher GPA but lower LSAT, vice versa, law school evaluate them in different ways, perhaps. Natalia, what's your take?
My take on that is that when you are a splitter in that way, my recommendation is that you seek a letter of recommendation from someone who can speak to the things that we would normally draw, the conclusions that we would normally draw from the LSAT score. So that's logical reasoning and reading comprehension and likelihood to succeed on the first year classes, right? So if you took some pre-law classes type classes, some law adjacent, as I call law adjacent classes, or some classes that are reading comprehension heavy, maybe it's a good idea to really get a letter of recommendation from someone who can speak to that to kind of fill the gaps. You want to use your letters of recommendation to enhance other parts of your application that maybe you feel like need to be highlighted. That would be my take. But also don't get too hung up on the numbers. Just focus on the overall strength of your application. That will go a much longer way. If you get too hung up on either of those metrics, you can really rob yourself of certain opportunities. Talk to the schools individually. I know we're out of time, so I will say if you have specific questions about UMass Law and you want to book an appointment, use our visit option on UMass Law's website. I do virtual meetings just like this with students all week long. And if you want to come in person, I also see the students in person and I'm happy to answer more questions.
Absolutely. Natalia, thank you. Aiden, I would assume the same. If the student have questions about BU law, please feel free to reach out to the admissions office and schedule any conversations or even go for a tour if you want to learn about opportunity or info sessions available at BU Law as well as UMass Law and many other law school as well. With that, I want to say thank you for both Natalia and Aiden for taking the time to share your valuable insight, experiences, suggestions for our students. Join me the virtual or whatever class that you can be able to provide for both of them. So thank you for taking the time to share your insight. Student in the room want to do a special shout out to Pre-Law Society for co-sponsoring this event with Career Services Internship Office here at Bridgewater State University. With that, we want to wish you best of luck as you continue to explore this journey. If you have questions about ways to learn about law school and other insight, feel free to reach out to our office here by scheduling an appointment and handshake to talk to any one of our advisors to learn about the decisions on choosing law school. Otherwise, please stay tuned for any upcoming program pertaining to law-related activities. Stay tuned for more information pertaining to that. With that, so thank you. Shout out to all of you. Appreciate taking the time to joining us this evening. We wish you well and hope to see you next time. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.